The anthropic principle is the principle that states that the universe has to be the way it is. It has to have the rules it does. It has to have the laws it does in order to enable the existence of beings like us who can live in and perceive and comprehend that universe. Now, this anthropic principle has gained wide acceptance among scientists today. Here is John Barrows and Frank Tipler. They've written the kind of classic account of the anthropic principle. It's called the Anthropic Cosmological Principle. I've got this book and I've made my way through it. It's about a 600-page book with a lot of equations and a lot of science, but its basic premise, its basic conclusion is the idea that the universe must have the laws and variables that it does. They must have those exact values. In the introduction to that book, here's physicist John Wheeler, by the way, a physicist highly respected by Einstein, by many others. John Wheeler writes that, quote, "A life-giving factor lies at the center of the whole machinery and design of the world," end quote. Now, in recent years, the chief astronomer of Great Britain, in fact, the official royal astronomer, his name is Martin Rees, published a book called Just Six Numbers. And what he said is that if you look at the universe, it comes down to six critical laws or six critical equations, which Rees loosely calls six numbers. And Rees argues that these six numbers underlie the physical properties of the universe, and each is an exact value that is required for life to exist. If any one of the six, one of them, for example, is the so-called gravitational constant, or the so-called strong nuclear force. If these are different, quote, even to the tiniest degree, end quote, and now I open quotes again, Rees writes, there would be no stars, no complex elements, no life. Now, Martin Rees disavows any theological implications. He says, I'm not talking about God. I'm merely telling you that these six critical numbers that define nature, that define the whole world, the whole universe, they have to be exactly the way they are. You change them even a little bit, and essentially we disappear from the picture. Now, there is an astronomer at Princeton, Lee Smolin, whom I've quoted before, and Lee Smolin is actually an outspoken atheist. But nevertheless, Lee Smolin makes the following observation, which I think is helpful to understand the anthropic principle. He says, try to imagine God as a kind of master technician. And God is sitting at a desk, and on the desk you have a whole bunch of dials in front of him. And one dial is the mass of the proton, one dial is the charge of the electron, one dial is the gravitational constant, and so on. And what God is doing is he's kind of randomly spinning these dials. And now, says Lee Smolin, what is the probability that random spinning of these dials will produce a universe that has stars and planets and life? I'm now quoting him. The probability, he says, is incredibly small. How small? Smolin's estimate is it is 1 chance in 10 to the power of 229. In other words, what Smolin is saying, and his point is put slightly differently by Stephen Hawking in his book, A Brief History of Time. I'm now quoting Hawking. If the rate of expansion 1 second after the Big Bang had been smaller by even 1 part in 100,000 millionth million, the universe would have recollapsed before it even reached its present size. So the odds against us being here are, you could say, astronomical. And yet we're here. So who is responsible for this? Now let's turn to Psalm 19:1. It says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Here's the Apostle Paul writing in verse 20 of the first letter to the Romans. Ever since the creation of the world, his invisible nature, namely his eternal power and deity, has been clearly perceived in the things that have been made. This astounding statement by Paul is making the point that we can't see God. God is invisible. So his invisible nature. At the same time, says Paul, we can see God through his creation. God's creation is the signature of God. It's almost like you watch a Dinesh D'Souza film and you go, man, that's a Dinesh D'Souza film. Dinesh isn't around. I may not even be in the film, but hopefully my work has a signature, so to speak, or even a book. If I remove my name from the title, you read the book, but maybe the book is distinctive enough in its coverage, choice of topic, the way it's covered, that you go, yeah, that's Dinesh. And that's what Paul is saying here about the universe. The universe advertises the presence of its maker. So the Anthropic Principle appears to be a thrilling confirmation of these ancient passages. Not only does the Anthropic Principle suggest a creator who is incomparably intelligent and resourceful, but, and this is the key point, it suggests a creator who has special concern for us. Why? Because the universe is built in such a way, and it had to be built in this way in order for us to be in it. So this is a personal creator, not some abstract first mover who uncorked the universe without any evident care for the creatures who would eventually inhabit our planet. Through science, we're witnessing powerful evidence that our human destiny seems to be an intrinsic part of a divine plan. We don't have to be intimidated by the vast, empty spaces of the cosmos. They exist for our sake. And contrary to the principle of mediocrity, we live in a meaningful and purposeful universe. The Anthropic Principle suggests that human beings are part of the intended handiwork of God.